is a hearing being held by the Reedfield Board of Appeals on an application filed by Don and Scott Morash seeking a road setback variance. Specifically, the Morash's house at 111 Mayo Road. They are seeking to build and replace an old residence with a new building, which would be further from the high water mark of Veronica Lake, but which would be at its western end, about 37 feet from the center line of Mayo Road. As most of you know, under our land use ordinance, the required setback is 25-50. 25 from the edge or 50 from the center line. Mayo Road is very narrow. So the Morashes are requesting, in essence, a 13-foot variance of the side end of their house to the center line of the road. Should we probably reintroduce ourselves, those of us in the room, starting with Will?
I'm Will Daniels, I'm a board member.
Clifford Buck, board member.
Fran Zambella, board member.
Oh, I'm sorry, Holly Ronlo, Secretary of the Appeals Board.
Now, if any of you in the room.
And this is Henry Whittemore. I'm a member of the appeals board.
Thank you, Henry. Tell us who else is present on Zoom.
I'll read them off. Tom Gottschalk, Janet's iPad, Keith Meyer, TR004940, David Palmer, Rob Shoemaker, Mary Costigan, Samantha Morash, Megan Morash, Huey, Jeff Medor, Eric Dyer, and Henry.
Okay. May I ask Ms. Costigan, you're counsel for the applicants here?
That is correct. Yes.
So at any point, if you have something to say on their behalf, we'll hear from you. I want to be sure you have access to be able to chime in whenever you feel it appropriate.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Peter, this is Paula Clark from the planning board. My husband's name is showing up in the box, Jeffrey Medor. It's not Jeffrey Medor, it's Paula Clark. I'm not here as a participant. I'm just interested in listening to the proceeding.
Thank you, Paula. Of course, members of the public, planning board members, anyone else that may speak at the appropriate time as we go on in this hearing. Before when we thought you were all online, but we weren't, we were discussing an issue involving one of our board members, Cliff Buck, who was interim CEO at an earlier time, and had some involvement with this land and the Morash property. Cliff, do you want to recuse yourself, or are you just raising the issue of whether we should recuse or you should be recused?
I'm not necessarily wanting to recuse myself. I'm wanting to disclose my past knowledge of the application, the fact that I've heard the arguments. I did not really look at the application for the first time, because I have seen the application and did listen to the arguments before the planning board. So the question in mind is whether I can feel it's appropriate to participate, considering that the noble requirements of the Board of Appeals, that is, information should be seen for the first time. And I think that perhaps the board should weigh in on what their thoughts are here.
Cliff, do you feel that you are that because of your prior knowledge, you would be unable to judge this fairly or without prejudgment?
I don't think I have a problem with that. mention, I can't erase my memory of it, but still judge the application fairly, yes.
So we went back to where we were earlier. I guess the question I would have, does the applicant object to Cliff Buck's continued participation in this proceeding? And Ms. Costigan, you can weigh in if you'd like to.
Did she hear you?
I can hear you, but I'm not as close to the players as my client is. So if there's an opinion legally, the board would generally vote on whether the board member should recuse him or herself. Certainly, if there is any perception of bias, it does have the potential of tainting the decision. I don't know if Scott has anything to say about potential bias.
Honestly, with some of the concern that Cliff has raised, having a fresh set of ears and eyes that on it might be in the true nature of seeing the whole plan for the first time is what the nature of how it reads, and I was just told, so I think maybe that would be best.
So you'd like him to recuse himself?
In the nature of what was the Greek term you used?
De novo.
De novo. No offense, just the interpretation of it.
My 2 cents are a de novo hearing just means it's a new hearing. It doesn't mean you have to look at it with fresh eyes. It's just a new hearing. That's all it is. And whether Cliff has prior experience in this doesn't, in my mind, raise any conflict of interest according to the ordinances that we have in Reedfield. The only issue is, can you fairly and impartially judge the issue? If you think like you're too friendly with the Marashes, or you're too vested with the town to vote for the town, then yes. But if it's just that you have a lot of knowledge about this plan, I don't think that even comes close to a conflict of interest. But those are my 2 cents.
Any other board members wish to speak on this question?
I think Cliff is qualified and with a unbiased mind. I think he's able to use his background information and be an asset to the decision of this application.
Henry, do you wish to say anything about this?
Not at this point, Peter. No, I've been following the discussion. I don't have any further comments.
Holly, do you want to say anything about this issue?
I think Cliff can be open-minded, but I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
The ordinance, just the board, that is the Reedfield Board of Appeals ordinance. The only guidance it provides us on this question is to whether a particular issue involves a conflict of interest sufficient to disqualify a member from voting thereon. On that standard, if that's the standard, my opinion is that there is no such conflict of interest here. Now, whether as Will said, prior knowledge is never been a disqualifier in and of itself. The only question is whether prior involvement has made someone prejudge, make it impossible for them to fairly judge this new application. And personally, I don't see any evidence that it's done that. As long as Cliff feels he's able to do it, I see no other evidence that would disqualify him. But let's take a vote, as we must do under the ordinance. As to the question of whether Cliff Buck should be disqualified from hearing this, deciding this matter, being involved in the decision. Who says yes to that, disqualify? Who says no, not disqualify? I do. Okay. Well,
If that's Henry, how do you want Henry?
so far the vote is it 4-0?
Yeah.
Federal County.
I think we need to go through some kind of a role, because there are people out there and you need to be able to record what their vote is going to be. You have a board member out there, he needs to identify and say how he needs to vote. So you have an accurate record.
Well,
And that's all I'm saying.
well, we're all in this room, and we've all voted one way. And we know, the only person left is Mr. Whittemore, and how would you like to vote, Henry?
As I said earlier, as I said earlier, I said I vote no. I don't see there's a conflict.
Okay, so that vote is unanimous, and we'll proceed from there. There's another preliminary. The question was raised as to why it took so long to get to this hearing. In the sense, the application takes September 3rd, and it's now October 28th. And I want to make clear for the record, that there was a question, at least in my mind, about which board had jurisdiction, first primary jurisdiction to decide this question. It wasn't that we were delaying it or sitting on it. There were internal conversations between the Board of Appeals, the town manager, and the planning board about who would go first. And the reason for that is that under the land use ordinance, Article 3, Section 4, the planning board has the jurisdiction to decide on the size and configuration of houses in the shoreland zones. And we don't. We rule on variances here. So it was my suggestion that perhaps the planning board wanted to weigh in on the question before we went through a variance process. The planning board did not agree with my suggestion, and the town's attorney then directed us, the Board of Appeals, to proceed with the variance hearing. So I'm sorry for this long monologue, but what it means is I want the applicant to understand, everyone to understand, that we can only rule on the variance. We can't rule on whether on the size of the house in relation to the 100-foot setback from the high water mark of the lake. And so hypothetically, if the Board of Appeals were to grant your variance request, it wouldn't fully resolve the matter. The matter would then go back to the planning board. You need presumably site review and an approval to build the house proposed. I just want to be sure everyone understands that. Don't want any misunderstanding about what our role is here. So now we'll proceed with discussion of the variance request, and we all have had copies of your application, Mr. Morash, but you're welcome to say whatever you'd like to.
Okay, thank you. My wife and I have owned our lake house on Maranacook Lake for 22 years. Enjoying water skiing, swimming in the summer, fishing and foliage in the fall, and skating and snowmobiling during the winter. We are both ready to retire and move to Maranacook Lake to enjoy the beauty and the community. And the beauty of it is until we no longer can. Our present 2,000-foot structure, although winterized and 18 feet from the water, is not adequate for a retirement house to allow our entire family to live in. We do not want to take a risk walking from a car to a house in later years during the winter, as that can end badly on snow and ice, which is prevalent here in Maine, which is why we need a garage. The structure we have proposed removes the 2,000-foot existing structure and builds a new structure, which is compliant to the land use ordinance with the exception of a 50-foot road setback. We are asking for a change from the 50-foot setback to 37 feet in the road/driveway setback. Our neighbors, the Hueys, who own the property, are in total support of this change. The proposal to the town will improve the lake by removing the structure, which is presently 18 feet from the water, and replace it with a structure which is greater than 75 feet from the water. Replace the 52-year-old septic system, which is 50 feet from the water, with a newly designed, almost 75 feet away system, new system. Lastly, we would commit to putting over $10,000 into improving the section of the road which accesses the camp and the Huey's camp, so the torrent rains that when they come are not taking top dressing into the lake, which would be a huge improvement for the lake. As far as my wife and I, we have been members of the Maranacook Lake Association for years. I was part of the dam committee, which drove the revising of the errant installation of the South End Dam to bring the water level down in Maranacook Lake, so shoreline erosion did not affect our lake. I have attended milfoil identification classes and performed boat inspections at the North Basin of Maranacook Lake in an effort to be good stewards of the lake. That is our opening statement. Anything you would like to add? Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, would you like to add anything, Mrs. Moran?
Just to reiterate, we really want to retire here and enjoy this community. We've enjoyed it for the 22 years part-time and looking forward to being a permanent member.
Questions for the
Chair,
applicant?
if I could add a few more, is it my opportunity at this point, or do you want to ask some questions first of Scott and
No,
then
go
have me
ahead,
chime in?
Scott.
Okay,
Go
sure.
ahead.
So just to give the sort of the legal background, I think what the chair was saying earlier, and to clarify and correct me if I'm wrong. So this property is challenging because, as Mr. Morash stated, the current house is located essentially right on top of the water. And if you are going to replace a foundation, you're required to move your structure as far away from the water as practical. That is the decision that the planning board will make as to whether this house is situated such that it is the furthest away from the water as practical. We believe that it's been designed that way. We've pushed it as far back as we can. And in order to do that, we're encroaching on the road setback. So that's why we came to you to get variance from the road because pushing it away from the water as much as possible is squeezing us onto the road. There was an email from Colin Clark of DEP that we received. I don't know if the board saw this, and you'll see what
Yes, by
he
the
put.
way, that's been distributed, I'm sorry, Ms. Cox, just to interrupt.
Yeah,
That email, and I should, it's been distributed to each member of the Board of Appeals. Under state law, as Ms. Costigan knows, but some of you might not, under state law, DEP must be notified of every variance application for structures located in the shoreline zone. And so they were duly notified, and the response was this email from from Colin Clark. Sorry to interrupt.
that's okay. My only point with this is I know that this board is not deciding whether it's pushed back as far as practical, but what this shows is that even if we took the existing footprint and moved it back 100 feet, we're in the road setback, and we need just as much of a variance in that scenario as we are seeking today. So that is, illustrative of the fact that even if we lifted that building and moved it out, we still need this variance. It's important. We've designed it as well as we could. Certainly the fact that we believe that it's justifiably a little bit between over the 100 feet, and that's what we'll talk about the planning board with. But when we're talking about the encroachment into the road setback, what you're looking at today are the factors that I provided a letter. And I won't go through all of them. I'll do them very briefly. One is the first standard is with regard to the unique circumstances of the property and not general conditions of this neighborhood. You were all at the site today. I'm not sure what you observed, but my observation is that there are no general conditions of this neighborhood. It's all very different. This lot is next to a very, very large lot, and there's another lot, and lots are all different sizes and shapes. And so there are no general conditions that are creating this need. The uniqueness of this property is its shape, is the fact that it has a building that's located within 25 feet of the water and therefore can't be expanded where it is. And the fact that there's a hill. So, we'll have to be building this house essentially into the hillside. So there are certainly unique circumstances of this lot, and there's also just no general conditions of this neighborhood that you can apply to the situation. Secondly, the question is whether the granting of the variance will alter the essential character of the locality. Again, that's something you would have seen out today on your site visit, but the neighbors support this application. Placing a home 37 feet from the road certainly would not alter the essential character of a residential neighborhood. The next one is the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant. That is, the hardship here was created by the zoning ordinance, not by any action taken by the Morashes. The granting of the variance won't substantially reduce or impair the use of abutting property. This will not. And again, I believe the neighbors support this and don't believe that it's going to impact their property at all. And finally, the granting of variance is based on demonstrated need, not convenience, and no other feasible alternative is available. Again, it is not convenient to move this house away from the water. I think convenience would be to replace it right where it is. I think everyone, I'm sure the Morashes would love to have a new house 14 feet from the water. That would be pretty convenient, but that's not what they're allowed to do. So they're required to move this, and to move it away from the water as much as they can, they're going to have to encroach into this road setback. It's a 50-foot road setback, which is pretty large. And so 37 feet is still a pretty good size distance from the road. So again, there's more detail in the letter I provided, but legally, those are the standards that we believe we meet them. And then we ask that this road setback variance be granted. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, what about the requirement that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted?
So we're requesting a variance under the single family dwelling section 7D, and that standard does not apply to this request. It's a different set of standards.
Why doesn't 7D apply in this case rather than the one you just said?
Because it's a year-round single family home, and the ordinance allows this variance to apply, these standards to apply to that situation.
But you have to be a resident.
They're going to be, this is for a year-round home. You don't have to be a resident to apply. The variance has to be for a year-round residence, and this is for a year-round residence. What we indicated in our letter is that we'd be happy to place any conditions on this approval that would be necessary, such as requirement to verify year-round residency prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy. But it is a year-round residence. It's a chicken or egg. You're only seeking a variance if you don't have a house yet. And if you don't have a house yet, it can't be your year-round residence. So it's about the house that's being built and whether that house is going to be a year-round residence, and it will in this case.
But the land use ordinance.
I have this is Henry Whittemore. I'm sorry to barge in. I have a question for Attorney Costigan and my Zoning Board of Appeals colleagues, if I may.
Sure, we can always go back to, we're gonna go back to the other issue in a minute.
Well, I think it's related to what Attorney Costigan is talking about, and my question relates to the undue hardship, if that's the right phrase. Peter or Will, from our zoning ordinances, or possibly state statutes. I just want to understand what the relationship is relative to what Attorney Costigan has just laid out to the idea of hardship and unmitigatable hardships, or something that accrue to the applicant here. I hope that's clear. Peter, you might be able to help me with that.
Yeah, undue hardship is a term that's used in the introduction, but specifically here, maybe you're referring to subsection or subdivision E, where it says the granting of the variance must be based on demonstrated need, not convenience, and no other feasible alternative is available.
Yeah, I think that's the strain I'm heading down, correct. And I heard Attorney Costigan mention that or address that. I guess I'd just like to plumb that a little bit further.
Are you asking, Henry, are you asking the applicant to discuss again what the need is?
Henry, can you repeat your question?
Yeah.
My apologies. I'm
Henry, do you want Ms. Costigan to respond to what you're saying? Are you asking a factual question of the applicant, or?
Well, yes. Mary Costigan, if you could, please,
Sure.
It would be good to just hear a little more emphasis on that point. Thank
Yep.
you.
So, and I'll just for clarification purposes, undue hardship is used in two different ways in the ordinance. So typically when you're looking at a variance when it is not a single family home that's a year-round residence, you're looking at a different undue hardship definition, which does include the reasonable return prong. Section D does use the term undue hardship, but it defines it differently and uses the 5-prong test, which I just went through. So that's just for your information. So E, again, is the granting of the variance is based upon demonstrated need, not convenience, and no other feasible alternative is available. So the need here is this, in order to replace the old current structure that's there today, 14 to 18 feet away from the water, it needs a new foundation. And DEP is going to require us, and your ordinance requires the Marashes to move that building out of the setback, the water setback, to the greatest extent practical. And in order to do that, we have to encroach into the road setback. And the point of showing you what the DEP email was is even if you don't even use the design that the Marashes have worked with their architect on, and you use the footprint of the existing, and it's not, I don't know if it's to scale, but if you look at it looks pretty close. If you look at the email from DEP, if you were to just pick up the house and move it outside the 100 feet setback, we are encroaching into the road setback, and that is the need. It's certainly not convenience. It would be much more convenient to be able to rebuild the foundation in its place and keep the house there. We're just not legally permitted to do that. And it's the push and pull that the chair was talking about earlier between the planning board and this board. We're stuck in the middle here. We're required to move this building, but there's this 50-foot road setback that's in the way that we would need a variance from. And so that's the need.
I'm not trying to parse words, I'm sorry, but you're not requiring, or no one's requiring the applicant to actually move a building, is it? But the applicant wishes to build a bigger and better building. I mean, isn't that right?
No, the need is actually to replace, the need is they could just replace that building in its place, but they can't because it's so old. They have to replace the foundation. And if you have to replace the foundation, you have to move it. The need is triggered by the need to replace the foundation. It's a foundation of a building that's been there how long, located 14 feet from the water.
I don't want to focus on the DEP email, Frank, because I think it's ambivalent. It can be interpreted differently. And that person's in here to be asked questions now. And believe me, we're not going to base our decision on the DEP email, though it is in evidence. It's by law, it's part of the evidence. But I interpreted the DEP email to say, well, there's a different way to do it, which would decrease the need for, you still need a variance, but you wouldn't need as much of a variance. But I don't think that's really, again, that's not what we're going to focus. I'm not going to focus on that tonight. I do have a couple factual questions for Mr. and Mrs. Barash, so I understand and help actually want to make sure, because some of this is in your application, but I just want you to expand on it if you like. Your lot size is what, it's 0.6 acres about?
Correct.
Okay. It is on a slope.
Yes,
So the road, it slopes down to the lake.
yes,
Your application is given basically, mentions 3 reasons why, it would be desirable to have a house the size you propose to build.
yes,
And one of which is that you have a large extended family, is that correct?
yes, yes.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, we have 2 girls, and they're to be husbands and grandkids, and my mother and my wife's mother, and I have 3 sisters, and we typically get together for, holidays and sometimes during the summer. Having room for people is something that, we've always done and would like to continue to do that. Secondly, I think it's important, to have a garage that's safe. You can literally on a stormy, awful day, you can still go out, which I do, and drive into a garage and walk directly into the house that, everybody's safe. And I can do that, Tom. 88 years old or 90 years old and not have to worry that I gotta walk in between two buildings or something like that. Again, I would say that, you got to see the structure of where it is right now. It's 18 feet from the water. We have a deck that overlooks the water. You don't even see that. We're looking at trying to give ourselves a structure that we'll be comfortable in. And with that, we are looking to give up 57 feet from the water to our new structure. The structure that we're, looking to put up is not out of size in other structures I've seen at the lake go up recently. And it's, we have 2,000 square feet right now. We're looking at building 26, I think is, or 28.
Does that, your applicant says 2642 or something, 40. Does that include, the deck or or just the footprint of the foundation?
Justin, I think
Justin?
the deck as well.
The
overall square footage includes the deck. Everything's behind the 75-foot mark, and then small portion of the building and the deck are in between the 100 and the 75-foot mark, or underneath 1,500 square feet in that area. Which is what
That actually wasn't the question I was asking. I just wondered, the square footage listed on the application, I think it's 2,642, I could be wrong. Does that include the deck? Or
Yes.
if you include the deck, does that make it a little larger?
Yes, it does include the deck.
It does include the deck.
Yep.
Now, Mr. Marash, another reason given in the application under need, is the idea that you have this hobby of repairing pinball machines,
Yes,
and so you need room for that.
yes.
Do you currently give a small business down in York County?
I own and operate Maine Pinball Repair. I may not look like a dinosaur, but I am. I am like one of 4 people in the state that still work in service pinball machines and put a big smile on people's faces when I do that. And I need room to do that. Pinball machines are relatively large, and my wife just backed into our garage door the other night because we didn't have enough room in our garage at home because I had 4 games in there. So yes,
And the third reason given in the application regarding need is that you're 6'8" and you need room.
yes, and that being said, I can't fit in small cars. I literally, I've gone to look at some vehicles that you would say, wow, that's a big SUV. And at 6'8", 250 pounds, I sit down in it, and my leg is against the wheel. So I drive a Ford Expedition, a relatively big vehicle. So therefore, I've got to have a big garage for that.
Going back to the family issue, your kids are grown up, right?
Yes,
Okay, so just normally, except for family gatherings, it'd be you and your wife would be the residents.
yes, that's correct.
And you do intend to move to Reedfield?
I would sign an affidavit, my wife and I would sign an affidavit that we will sell our house. We will list our house the day we get occupancy from the town. Our house will be going for sale in Hollis, and the biggest, third happiest day of my life will be the day that I can move out of Hollis. Second was when my septic system passed 22 years ago in Reedfield, and the first was marrying my wife.
Sorry, I don't mean to monopolize. Any questions for the applicants?
I have some questions. Mr. and Mrs. Boyd, you own this property for 22 years.
Yes,
Didn't at some point you realize that there were limitations to the size of this property?
yes,
Well, my point I want to make is knowing the size of the property and knowing that it has some limitations because of its topography. why wouldn't you consider a house that would fit on the water without requiring?
Understanding that the lane, right of way, and because of 911 defined as Mayo Road now, services myself in Huey's, the hardship of 13 feet, I really don't feel is an unreasonable ask to the town. And it isn't to the neighbor that owns the property, so therefore, and again, I look at the benefit to the lake, that we're gonna be taking a structure that's 18 feet, the septic system, the road. The benefit is there for us doing this, for everyone involved. And it'll help the town's tax base as well.
Where do you currently live?
Hollis. And I believe Mary had written and we had said that, you know, we will sign an affidavit that we will put our house on the market. And in this market, I wish I was already underway. I'd get great money for my house, but regardless, that will go away. I look forward to the day that I maintain one home, trust me. And this is where I want to be. This is where my best friends are and my people I truly, you know, enjoy and love.
Because this is a chicken and egg problem in terms of what is a primary residence. Just so I can explore it for another moment. Aside from your store, your pinball business, are you currently employed?
I am. I'm employed at Subcom in Newington, New Hampshire. We build subsea fiber optic networks. We connect the United States to every other country in the world.
Does that job allow you to work remotely?
It does, but let me check and see who's online here. As soon as I get my building permit, I will be working on my exit program. And my exit program is this close. You folks hold a lot of those keys.
Any other questions for the applicants at this point?
I'm having difficulty understanding this house without any prints, blueprints, without any dimensions. I'm trying to look at just this application here.
Yeah, some of us, there were stakes in the ground for the site visit this afternoon, but you were at, so that helped us a little bit in citing it on the face of the earth.
I wonder, it's already stated that the square footage does include the decks.
That singular.
What about it looks like in a very small cross section here, there's a lower level.
Yes.
Is that a finished daylight basement or?
No,
The garage.
the garage is part of the basement. And then, you know, the upstairs, right now, the bottom will not be touched. It'll be mechanical
Is this gonna be a
So
one-story house or
and two,
two-story?
yes,
So this very bottom level here,
yes,
that is unfinished,
yes.
and that square footage is or is not included in the 2,600.
Justin?
What was the question?
Is the basement included in the square footage?
Yes, I believe so. Floor area.
So you've included 2 floor levels and the decks and the total square footage of 2,600 feet. Is that correct?
Yep.
And what size is the garage?
Just over 800 square feet, I think.
800,
Is it eight?
Yes. It's a two-bay garage, so, you know, my wife and I can both park inside and I can have room to work on the pinball machines.
so it's what, 20, two bay, be what, 24 feet by,
Looks like we're 35.
it's kind of a 2.5 car.
Yeah, it's 2.5. There's a little shop on one side of it.
And I have not seen your calculations for lot coverage.
He has that. Justin, they're asking about lawn coverage.
Yeah, page A1. I'm not sure what pack you're looking at. A1, first page, bottom left. Has all the calculations for coverage and all that jazz.
You said on A1?
You said B, didn't
A1, the bottom left
you?
corner.
Okay. So the lot coverage of the finished project, so totally completed, would not exceed 20%, is that correct?
Correct.
That includes the, what about the footprint of the old house?
That's going to be removed.
Would be revegetated or what?
Yes, yep. We have buffer plans as well in the construction packet.
You mentioned the proposal includes the support of the Hughes.
Yes.
What about the other butter? I believe their name's Corey.
Yeah, they submitted a letter
Okay.
on our behalf.
Yeah, well, you've seen the Dewey letter. I don't know if you've seen the Corey letter. We can get it. It's submitted. We'll find it.
There was an email sent to myself. I thought he copied the town. I'm not sure. None of the variance is over that side. It's just on the road side.
How does
The
the,
Huey's property line.
part of the character of a neighborhood is, have to do with, in my opinion, the size of the buildings? How does it project compare to your neighbors?
It is very likely very close to the same size as the Hueys. Excuse me, the Corys. And then over the other side of the Corys, there's only 4 people down that road. Is Keith and Janet Meyer, and their house is probably 4,000 square feet.
Familiar with their house? How about Hughes?
Huey's is small, they're on the point, and so they're very limited as far as what they can do on the peninsula. Yes.
Corey's is a single floor, one story, is it?
No, it's 2 stories.
Two-story finished basement.
Yeah.
They like walk-in basement, so 3 stories kind of in that walk-in.
Yes.
I'm wondering, I guess, I don't know if this is too personal or not, but I've got a list here from the Department of the Secretary of State of the different documents that establish your residence. It would be very simple to do. I'm wondering why you wouldn't do something like this.
What is that?
Huh?
What is that?
I'd say I have a list from the Department of Secretary of State here
Yes?
of the bullets of the things that would qualify you to become a resident.
Yes?
And some of them are quite easy to do, and I'm wondering why you wouldn't do
You
that
mean things
first.
like changing voting residence and changing driver's license information, is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
If the board would like me to do that, I can do that next week. If that would, help with the appeal process in a heartbeat, yes,
in my mind, that's a real obstacle.
okay? I'm willing to sign an affidavit that, we can't have occupancy until we put our house on the market here. We're not going anyplace else, but, we want to retire and be up here and right here.
Yeah, the affidavit doesn't qualify, but a lot of things here are pretty easy to do. You're already getting a utility bill down there, right?
Of course,
Okay, utility bill's one of them.
I already have that. I have 2 utility bills from there, cable and the electricity.
Copy the list. I say in my mind, that's kind of an obstacle here. Right.
So
Well, we can get,
specifically,
Not
would
the
you-
only obstacle, but
Okay, so if the board in general is, requesting that I do that, and that's gonna help, get the variance, that I would do,
So it needs to be your primary year-round resident. That's present tense. It's not future tense. It needs to be, you need to live there as far as I understand. Year-round.
Mary?
I'm not sure how you can live in a house that hasn't been built yet. I have a real issue with that. It really is a chicken or egg. And I think what you're asking them to do is to move into the house for a day to make it their year-round residence, to then move out and live in a hotel while this house is constructed. And I think that's unreasonable. I think you can absolutely condition an approval based on whatever would satisfy you to demonstrate that this is that what's being built is their year-round residence. And I think to interpret an ordinance in a way that is unjust is improper. And so I think, I don't know what scenario exists where, a house that has not been built yet is someone's year-round residence. And that's why the only reason you'd be asking for a variance is for something that hasn't been built yet.
The scenario is that they just live in the house that's there right now.
Then rip that one down, don't they?
But this is a variance provision. So there, if someone, so what you're saying is, in order for this to, in your world, for them to have it be their year-round residence, again, they would have to live there for a day or an hour and then move out and live in a hotel while it's constructed. Is that what you think this ordinance is intended to make somebody do?
I think the ordinance says you gotta live at the property as your primary year-round residence. And then if you want a variance, because you want to expand your house, which is your primary residence, so that it's too close to the road, then you come before the planning board and you fall under 7D. But otherwise you fall under 7B.
This doesn't say that, this doesn't say, it doesn't limit it to expansions. Again, when you have ordinance language that is, it has a result like this, the way you handle it is through conditions that would make sense of the language. And a condition is that the CEO is not going to let anybody live here until he or she is satisfied that that is a year-round residence. And that would absolutely comply with the intent of the ordinance.
there is a house down there.
This is Henry. This is Henry Whittemore again. I've been listening, and I'd like to ask perhaps Peter and Will. I think it was you that was speaking most recently, and Cliff, to provide your interpretation on the idea of conditions on such a request and precedents, and how that interplay between conditions and perhaps, hearing what is being said about year-round living, it's a catch-22, how a condition and a precedent might disadvantage or otherwise, put our land use ordinance and our planning board and our zoning board of appeals in a compromised position in the future. I'm concerned about that, but I'm also feeling that there's some catch-22 going on here, as I think Mary Costigan has just pointed out. So Peter, Will, Cliff, can you help me with that idea, that thinking?
Well, this is Peter, Henry. This may be better suited for the deliberation phase than the evidentiary phase, but I can only tell you what I think, which is that, there was an attempted, when there was a variance filing application in 2020, I raised this issue that it was at that time on its face, the applicants were not primary year-round residents. I do think that there's a chicken and egg problem when we're talking about a desire to build what would be what the applicant represents and will represent under oath to be their future primary year-round residents, and they were looking for a road setback. I don't think personally, if that were the only issue, the only problem here, I would say that that a conditional approval could be done. Conditioned upon establishing residency within a date certain, by a date certain. So that's my opinion about that particular issue. There are other issues that we will get into later.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter.
I haven't run into this.
I don't have a problem with it. I think, I agree with you, Peter, that it could be conditional. I think that's the least of them. Or those.
Well,
I guess it wouldn't have to be. If they know the house, they're gonna live there.
Yeah.
Yes. Again, I have two homes that I have to maintain right now. I can't wait till that day goes away. That is the number two. When my house is built, I will be retiring. Looking to see who's on, make sure no one I know from work's there. I will be done. I will be out here. It's that simple.
I think my colleague's questioning is not unreasonable to me because the law says that we, the appeals board, we can only grant a compliance when it's in strict, we can only grant a variance when it's in strict compliance. Strict compliance is with the standards set forth, both in state law and nearer in our ordinance. And so it's troublesome. This isn't a question, when we're looking at a variance, any variance, it's not a question of what I personally might think would be a good idea. There are a heck of a lot of things that people present to us and have in the past that I personally have no problem with. But that when I have to apply the law, it becomes a different question because there we need to be convinced that there's strict compliance with these standards. That's what we're really dealing with. And so, well, anyone else want to speak on this question? On the question of the primary residence, we move on to a different issue. Okay. Anything else you folks, Mr. and Mrs. Moran, that you'd like to say?
To say the existing structure that's there, there's no well. There's no real stairwell in there. There's no closets, like it's not a typical house to live in. There's no foundation.
The insulation's good, but, you know, get some cold nights, and I'm roaring the fireplace and the wood stove, and again, that was built 50 years ago.
It's really not a structure to live in, to become a resident right now.
Right.
That's why we're
Right.
building a new home to live in.
Is it?
And hold my occupancy until I have a license, you know, and I change my voter status and all the rest of it. I'm fine with that. I will list my house the day that I, you know, that I hear that, you know, we're 2 months away from being done.
Any questions again from any further questions from any of the board members?
I have a question for Justin. Justin, could you describe the floor plan of the house a little bit, the rooms, for example?
So you basically.
Hey, Cliff, this is Henry. Cliff?
Yes.
Cliff, this is Henry. Before we get into the topic about describing the rooms in the house, I wonder if we could first talk about the approach to the house and the roads and the nature of Mayo Road and Prosperity Lane, or whatever it's called, and the neighbors and sort of the sense of the community around the Marash's proposal, and where people are coming from in terms of thinking this makes sense for where they live and their community, and the impact on that community and on water quality in the lake, which is what our LUL is all about. I'm much more interested in what happens outside the house than what happens inside the house. So, so forgive me, Cliff, but that's more interesting to me than the question about the layout of the house. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm trying to address the demonstrated need and not convenience.
Yeah, and you certainly know that world way better than I do, Cliff. Yep.
And, I mean, Henry, we believe based on what we know, no one's objecting. No butters are objecting to this proposal. So on the other hand, the question of things like water quality and any phosphorus runoff, that's planning board. Those are planning board issues. We really don't get into that. We can't get into those issues. But all we can do is look at the variance law and say, does this proposal meet each of those criteria for a variance? And I do think one is, and one of the criteria that strikes me as being very important is the issue of we have to decide whether the granting the variance is based on demonstrated need, not convenience, and no other feasible alternative is available. So I think,
right.
So to that extent, I think a question about the size of the proposed house or the interior of it is relevant. It may not be you may consider it not, how relevant, you can argue about, but I think it's a relevant question.
Okay, well, good, Peter. Thank you, and apologies, Cliff, for putting you off track. But thank you for that, Peter. Understood.
As far as the nature of the neighborhood, are we going there? Or?
No, not in my mind.
Okay. Yeah. And it's how about the runoff and the effect of the lake? No. Okay.
Planning board issues.
Yep. Great.
How many rooms in the house?
Bedrooms.
7? You got 7 rooms, how many beds?
Wait, no, she asked bedrooms. She asked you a question in return, in response to your question.
Oh,
So how many total rooms?
how many total rooms?
3 bedrooms.
Huh?
3 bedrooms.
So 7
Kitchen,
rooms
living
total?
room. 7 downstairs, kitchen, living room, bathroom.
I've got 3, so a master bedroom upstairs, 2 small guest bedrooms, guest bath, small office, and then a combined living, dining, kitchen space.
We
Anyway,
we have one
we
less,
couldn't hear him. Could you say that louder, please?
one more time. Justin,
Yep, so upstairs, you have a master bedroom with a master bath, 2 small guest bedrooms, a guest bathroom, small office, and then a combined dining, living, kitchen area.
4 rooms up and a combined living room, dining room downstairs.
Open space, kitchen, living room, dining room,
yes,
open space. Okay.
That's all on one floor.
So, and there's 2 baths total,
Yeah, one master.
1 up and 1 down.
No,
It's all on one floor,
yes.
and the basement is
That was
underneath?
1 floor, and then the lower level has the garage, 2-car garage, a small shop, some mechanical room, a small half bath, and it's a bunch of storage.
So it's all single floor living? Unless you go downstairs.
yes.
Say that again, please.
Upstairs is 3 bedrooms, an office. Downstairs is.
No, Cliff, you misunderstood. No, that you misunderstood.
Okay.
It's all on one floor. The living area is all on one floor, and then below that is the garage with these other rooms, the half bath, the workshop, and mechanicals. So the bedrooms and the kitchen, living room, dining room, open area are all on one floor.
It's not with that cross section.
A1.
Well, this really isn't a flat roof house, is it?
No,
It's depicted as that. So is there a half story up there and then?
yes, it's under 25 feet in height as the ordinance.
What's up under the peak of the
I
roof?
mean, once you put a roof on this drawing here,
Yes,
is there a half story in that roof?
house, it's not living space, it's attic.
It's storage area.
It's not storage area.
I think that's a roof line. It's underneath, it's within the box. On A6, Justin, on A6, is the roof line contained within the box? You
Yes.
understand what I'm saying? So if you're looking at the big black outline of the box on A6, it kind of looks like it's a flat roof house in California or something.
Yes, if you look right above it, you can see that there's different contours to that.
Okay. So the roof line is underneath the big bold box.
Yes,
Yes.
and some of the difficulty with this, that, you know, we would like to build something that's doesn't have the angles that it does, but trying to keep from the setback and just asking for 13 feet, that's, you know, getting the maximum area that we can involved in that.
Why couldn't you put a half story up?
Because with a height restriction.
Because of the,
Height restriction is 25 feet inside,
inside of 75,
inside of 75 to 100 feet, yes.
right, but a lot of your house is over 100 feet.
this is what Justin's come up with. And we've, we've already been down roads of architectural design, to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars the first time.
Are there prints available for the house?
There are some, but not understanding exactly what we're able to do until we have a variance. It's very difficult to, ask Justin to come up with, specifics to the house other than the shell of it at this point, because I'd be shoveling money to Justin, which he's a nice guy, but it costs money to put plans together. And until I know what I can build, it's money flying in the wind. Sorry, Justin.
But I guess with your variances, it's 3 little triangles of land that are
Yes.
going in.
Yes,
Why can't you just back it up a little bit? The 13 feet or whatever it is.
because it would make the house small enough that it would not be functional for us. And it would also make my garage small enough that I would have no room whatsoever to park and then have my shop in there. I do pay taxes on my business as well, which would then go to the town of Reedfield.
And to maximize your space on this lot, you'd have to build a triangular house.
Honestly, yeah, that might be the thing. Is that aesthetically, pleasing to my neighbors? I don't think they'd like to see that, but we've tried. Justin has done a nice job trying to put something together here that is gonna be pleasant to the eyes.
Triangular house would be hard to build too.
I think at this point in time in building history, I think I'd have a tough time finding a builder for it. They'd look at me and say, yeah, no.
At this point, let me ask, are any of you folks who are on Zoom or on the phone, do you wish to speak?
Hello?
Yes,
Yeah, my name is David Huey. I own the abutting property from Scott. At the end of Mayor Road, the small camp on the lake. And Scott and I have been friends for many years, ever since he moved there. And I'm also friends with many of the people in that room, Eric Falconer and Dave Palmer's online as well. And Keith Meyer. We're a little community down there. And I don't think there's anybody in that group that objects to what Scott is doing, myself included. I even sold him a small slice of land so that he could increase his square footage on his property, because I want to see him have his dream house and retire there. And once again, I'm the primary landowner that surrounds a lot of these places. I own almost 20 acres, all the way up to 3/4 of the way up to the highway. And so it doesn't impact me in any way whatsoever, as far as if I want to build my own home there someday. I have plenty of land to do it, and I would not have to come before you guys for a variance, because I could certainly meet any setback requirements. Other than that, I have really not a whole lot to say. I just want to make sure that you put me down as a positive force in Scott's direction. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Ewing.
You're
Would
welcome.
anyone else who's on Zoom or, before I get to people in the room, anyone else who's on Zoom or the phone who'd like to speak?
Yes, my name is Keith Meyer and I'd like to speak.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm a neighbor that is one lot removed from Scott. We bought our place in 2005, and we are one of the people that are considered non-resident and sort of problematic people. I'm curious as to why we're so bad in terms of taking care of our own property and whatever. Scott is the epitome of someone who is interested in ecology. Scott is a crazy guy in some ways, but he is very, very interested in taking care of Maranacook. And we're here to support his application. And as far as non-resident versus resident, we find it, my wife and I find it interesting that because he lives in Hollis, Maine, he is somehow treated as an interloper. We are from Kansas, and we bought this because of our daughter being close to us. And we are surprised as to how different we're treated because we're from Kansas and we're not Mainers. But here is Scott and Dawn, who are Mainers. And you're raising questions about the integrity of his coming to retire in Maranacook. And I have zero doubt. I have been a law professor for 45 years, and you make judgments about people. And Scott and Dawn are reliable, trustworthy people. And it pains me to hear you talk about he is somehow trying to play games with your requirements, number one. Number two, I don't understand your legal rules, and I'm the first to say that. But as far as the Marashes being understanding of the importance of the quality of the water of Maranacook, that is important to them and to their family. And we have a daughter that's going to inherit our place, and I have zero doubt about the Marashes' commitment to the quality of Maranacook and to the state of Maine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Let me try to explain one element of what you raised about why are we asking questions about residency. It's not to question the credibility or the quality of anyone. It's Maine law. Maine law creates a different standard for those seeking a variance. If they're seeking a variance with respect to property that is not their primary year-round residence, then in addition to the other things they have to prove, which we'll go through tonight, they would also have to prove that their land could not yield a reasonable return unless the variance were granted. The Maine Supreme Court, in a series of decisions, I've been a lawyer for 44 years, so I guess I can say this. The Maine Supreme Court, in a series of decisions in the 1970s and 1980s, interpreted that language about reasonable rate of return to be very onerous on the applicant, to the point where if you can have any usable use of the land without the variance, they said they instructed the municipalities not to grant the variance. In response to those court decisions, the Maine legislature empowered the towns and cities to relax that standard in the case of primary year-round residents. So for primary year-round residents, you don't have to prove the reasonable rate of return is impossible without the variance. That's why it's important for someone, it's much less onerous for someone who is asking for a variance for a primary year-round residence. That's why we're asking this question.
And I understand that, but I guess my response to that is the law is not static. It is not irrational. It doesn't punish people. And here are the Marashes who want to come to Reedfield to live permanently. And you're saying because they're from Hollis, Maine, They are different. And I understand your concern about the rental issues and all of that. And we're there in the sense we don't rent our place. We're not going to. But the bottom line is, I just find it curious, to be honest, that someone who is a Mainer cannot come and in a sense say in a straightforward way, I'm a Mainer, I'm going to come here, and you challenge that. I understand the legal things. Let me tell you, I've spent my life teaching young people how to deal with that. But the bottom line is the law is not irrational. It is not uncompromising, and it does have feeling and it does respect people. And that's where I'm coming from. And I hope I don't cause Mary problems or the other people. I'm not a lawyer in this thing. I'm saying as a human being, these people are good people.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else, people in the room, anyone like to speak? Mr. Malocki?
Yes, I'm Tom Malocki, a resident of Reedfield. I've been in Reedfield since 1976, moving here from out of the state. So I've been here for a long time. I've sat on the Board of Appeals. I am currently the town representative of the Cobussy Water District. I am also the town representative on the Maranicook Lake Dam Association, and I am a member of the Maranicook Lake Association. I do not speak for those, but I tell you my heart is with those organizations. And the primary purpose of those organizations is to preserve the quality of the community and the lake in which is in our midst. To that, I look at what Mr. Marash and his wife are going to do. They are going to take down a structure that is 18 feet from the lake, cart it away. They're going to put in a brand new septic system that is designed for a 3-bedroom house. And they are saying to make our life bearable in our retirement, I need you to grant a variance of 13 feet. I see a whole lot more pluses in terms of the quality that's going to be improved of the lake, a septic system that's going to be gone, a better septic system that's going to be put in. And I've heard the term community used here over and over again. A community is not made up of trees, it's made up of people. And I've known these people for a long, long time. I've served on the Lake Association with this man as he did things. And I agree with the last gentleman who spoke and who says this is not a static wall. It has to take into consideration the community. These are people who I would like to see in my community because of what they have given back. And if you can grant the variance and put a stipulation on it that they sell their house in Hollis, these two people are people of their word. And I am asking you to apply a dynamic approach to welcoming people in our community. And I'll keep my mouth shut.
Thank you, Mr. Malocki. Anyone else like to speak who's in the room? Yes, sir.
My name is Eric Falconer, and I built a place here in Reedfield on Maranicook Lake in 2004. I've been watching this whole saga with the Marashes unfold. And as a resident of Reedfield and a resident of the lake, I've been dismayed by what I've seen. Shoreline zoning laws and other zoning laws are put in place to protect the body of water for shoreline zoning laws and to protect the interests of the town in terms of the other zoning ordinances. I understand the need for all these technical legal ordinances, but sometimes you have to rely on good old common sense, which just doesn't seem to be all that common anymore. What I've seen is a lot of strange interpretations of these ordinances, a bunch of hand wringing, and in my humble opinion, a fair amount of navel gazing. To me, the relevant questions at hand are, will the lake be better off with the completion of this project? Clearly, it will be better off. Nobody has argued anything different from that. Will the town be better off by the project? Clearly, it would be better off. The project expands the tax base, and there's nothing I can see to the detriment of the town. Do the abutters object to anything that they're trying to do here? No, the abutters are on record here tonight as being in favor of this project. I see the whole thing as a win-win-win for everybody involved, and I think it's high time for Reedfield's boards and committees to stop telling the Moorashes what you would build and let them do what they need. It's not your job as representatives of the town to tell the Moorashes what they can build. It fits, everything improves the lake, improves the nature of the neighborhood. Everybody around there is in favor of it, and I just beg you to see the forest for the trees and let the Moorashes make the improvements they want to make.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak, who's, again, listening in on Zoom or otherwise? Anyone else? Well, if not, yes, I'm sorry.
Including board member?
Go ahead, Fred.
Oh, I have to say that, I think what the Marshes are trying to do is an excellent thing. Or work for. I know I've served on pond associations, I've monitored water, I've inspected boats and all these things. But the point remains is the trade-off for what they want to do worth that 13 feet of. I'm not convinced, honestly, that there is a need that they're satisfying a hardship. I hear a lot of convenience things they want to do. They want to retire. They want to have a house that is comfortable, convenient, safe, efficient, and I'm up in the air as far as what I would say should go. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak right now? Otherwise, we move into deliberation phase. And in that, what I have found in the past most useful is if we go through each criterion, each of us go through criterions in order, because the applicant under the law has to meet each of these standards. Let me read them to you again.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, just for just a minute, before you, it sounds like you're entering into deliberations, and I just wonder if the applicant has one last opportunity to just add a few words, if I may. Because I think something's been, okay, so I just want to make sure that this point is clear, and I understand that you feel that the letter from DEP is irrelevant, but I think it's very relevant here. And I just want to make sure that all the board members understand this point. And it goes to what the members of the public have been talking about, the quality of the lake. Under shoreland zoning, the Moorashes by right can replace that structure that's there. That's by right, they can replace it. They're required by the law to relocate it to the greatest extent practical away from the water. If they are not allowed to get closer to the road than 50 feet, it's forcing the house to be closer to the water. And I just want to make sure that that is clear, that they have an absolute right to replace that structure. And what the DEP email shows is that if you take that footprint and you move it 100 feet away, you're getting into the setback just as much as we're asking today. And so and that absolutely goes to the need. That is the need. That is why this variance is needed in order to move this house as far away from the lake as practical. If they're not allowed to go any further than 50 feet from the road, they're going to be closer to the water because they do have the right to rebuild and relocate that structure because it's a legally existing non-conforming structure. So there is a need, and it is a good result if they're allowed to go closer to the road or closer to the water. So I just wanted to make that. I know it's a planning board decision, but it's a fact that they can replace and relocate that structure. And if it's not closer to the road, it's going to be closer to the water. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Costigan, but I have to, let me quote from part of this DEP memo or email. I'm going to quote it verbatim. This is Colin Clark speaking. From my preliminary review, it appears that the original footprint could be relocated to an area on the property that would have it completely outside the 100-foot setback, and then the extension could be conducted outside the buffer as well, with a local variance approval to reduce the roadside setback. I'm not sure if this is a helpful opinion for you folks.
No, that last part, he says with.
That's really helpful, and that's why I'm not relying on it. Okay, but what I think he's suggesting, the DEP person, is that there's a feasible alternative that,
No, he's actually saying we need a variance to relocate it. You can see
that's not how I read it.
the picture that he's provided is it's within the setback. I'm looking at it. It's exactly where our building is located. It's in the setback.
You were maybe running a picture, but
Yep.
his prose doesn't tell me that. Anyway.
Okay, I'm just saying if you then shift that away out of the setback, then it's closer to the water, and that's it's just a fact that will be the result, that building would then shift closer to the water.
It would have been nice if the planning board had given us more guidance before we got to this stage, but we are where we are. And so I think it's time for deliberation. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr.
So we have other friends on the lake that have built as late as 2007. They had a structure that was 30 feet, was 50 feet from the lake. They moved it back 75 feet. The road, center of the road to their structure is 30 feet on Mildred Lane, 2 lanes down from one structure.
They got a variance?
I don't know if they had to get one or not. Dave Palmer's residence, Mildred Lane. You can look at it. I can show you the plans to the place.
East Woodham Drive and Mildred Lane has 2 homes.
Yes. And there are other structures on that same side that were camps, have been taken down, moved back to 50 to 75 feet. And, you know, foundations put on them, and they're very close to the road. And I'm not asking for anything that other people haven't done on and again, I would add that, you know, we are, you know, going from 18 feet to 75 feet and giving up 57 feet proximity to the lake. And the improvements that we are putting out there, I would think would be in the better interest of Maranacuck Lake and the town of Reedfield.
May I add something? My name's Dan Marno. I'm with Scott's daughter, Megan. I'm not sure if during the site tour you witnessed the spiral staircase within the building, the existing. But
We didn't go
that's,
inside the existing building.
you did not?
We did not go inside the existing building. There was no reason for us to do so.
Well, so as far as hardships go, there's not many older women or men that can walk up a stair of that build. You would have to do thousands of dollars in additions to add a staircase that can support elderly to get into their bedroom, which is located upstairs. It's just, there's many factors that are not due to convenience. That's all.
Thank you. By the way, I was on the Board of Appeals in 2007, and we did not have a variance request on that property. I would have remembered it. Cliff, do you have any recollection of that original situation? Mr. Palmer was?
Dave Palmer, are you there? Can you speak?
Dave Palmer did go to the planning board.
Yes, I am here.
Dave, did you have to get a variance to the distance from the road that you are?
Well, I did not have to get a variance, no. And yeah, I met all criteria with the planning board for a non-conforming lot to remove our camp and build a year-round home, such as the Morashes want to do. My wife and I bought our camp in 1991, and I've seen a lot of change. And this is just my opinion, but the one big change is, and I don't know the exact year, but it was when 911 was implemented. And all our roads were camp roads. They were just not even year-round roads to feed the camps, the summer cottages. And it went from that to Fire Road. Our road was FRW 8, Fire Road West 8. And I believe the Morashes was FRW 5. They were basically just 6, okay. They were basically camp roads, and they went from camp roads to the 911 rules and regulations. So the town has come in and named the roads, such as Mildred Lane, Mayo Road. So the setback has gone to an extreme, 50 feet. I question if this is a Mayo Road or a shared private driveway.
Well, actually, that issue, Mr. Palmer, that issue did go to the planning board, and there was an opinion from the municipal about that. We don't have jurisdiction, so we're not ruled, it's been ruled on already that it is a road. I don't know if that's, I'm not expressing an opinion about it. All I can tell you is it was ruled on by the planning board.
Right, and my point I was trying to make was that was a camp, close to the water. It was moved back and built exactly what we would like to do. And that structure it's even closer to what we're asking for, and that was allowed.
Okay, but I think it's important to understand that there was no variance in that situation. For whatever, the Palmers were able to do what they wanted to do without the need for a variance. We're not applying, it didn't come before the Board of Appeals, it didn't have to.
Typically, when the planning board makes a determination that that is practicable extent, they take all the setbacks into account, and it doesn't really require a variance. If it's met, if everything is met to the greatest practical extent.
Okay, I hope this, yeah.
Can you say that again, Cliff? I didn't catch up. Can you say that again, what you just said?
Simply on a planning board application for non-conforming lots with the reconstruction on non-conforming lots. The planning board makes a determination of the most practical place to put that house. Taking everything into account, it doesn't require a variance.
Practical account.
There's practical extent. They take all the setbacks into account.
So, but they didn't do that in this case.
Exactly.
They did not feel that the necessary in this case. We had to get the minutes. Trying not to remember that meeting.
I just wonder why for the more actions, you've gone to the Beatty Municipal Association, the DEP.
Okay, we didn't do that, that's the planning board, okay?
Sorry.
We're just deciding on a variance
Yeah.
request. It's not that we're deliberately blinding ourselves, but we don't have the power to do. The planning board has more discretion, frankly, than Board of Appeals does under the law. Well, so what I think might be a good project doesn't necessarily mean that I can grant, that I can agree that it needs a variance or that it deserves a variance. Because I have to look at the law. But I would like to start by going through these, having each board member discuss whether, looking at these standards, whether you think this application meets those standards. And let me start with you, Fran.
I have to say, I don't think it meets the standards. I see more of a convenience and more of more benefit to the lake, the runoff situation. But I don't feel convinced that there's a hardship. That's the one.
So you're focusing on what's subsection E in the ordinance about the need for, about the variance must be based on demonstrated need, not convenience.
And I don't see the hardship.
What about, let's see, well, Henry, why don't we go next to you?
Oh, I think Henry's disappeared. I don't see his number up there anymore.
Well, while I call Henry, Will, do you want to go next?
Okay. We're looking at 7D.
Well, we could look at, I think you could look at any of these, discuss any of these factors, because the applicant has to meet all of them to get a variance under the law.
7D is in dog, not 7D is in baby.
Oh, you mean section 70. Okay, you're going back to the question of whether this is the primary year-round residence. You may have an opinion about that. If you want to speak to that, you're welcome to speak to that question as well as the standards. Yeah.
Okay. So if I were to grade this application under 7B as in boy, I think that the applicant would fail on 7B1A, reasonable return. There's clearly occupancy of that property that does not need a variance.
But let's assume for a second that 7D is the applicable section.
Okay, then going to 7D as in David, looking at 1A. I don't think the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not the, or. Okay, sorry, I guess the applicant qualifies on 7D1A. On subsection B, the granting of the variance will not alter. It's questionable there. I think the current essential character of the locality, it's a camp road, with camps. The applicants themselves have referred to camps. And the proposal that's going in now is a large house compared to what is there.
You didn't see the other structures. You didn't see the other structures. You can't make that judgment. There's two other structures down that road that are bigger, is big or bigger than mine.
So we're in deliberations now.
Yeah, really,
I'm sorry,
really.
I gotta go to the bathroom.
We'll wait for you.
There's a bathroom right behind the curtain there to the right,
Okay.
Meanwhile, I'll call Mr. Whittemore.
and there is a light in there too, Scott.
We'll see. Ringing.
There's a light in there. I bet there is.
You have to plug in the lamp there.
Plug in the lamp here. The light doesn't meet code.
We are recording this.
Yeah.
So Will,
Henry, it's Peter again. Are you still on with us? So you don't feel you don't want to vote on this, or? Well, we've got the deliberation stage, where we have to decide whether the applicants met the criteria to get a setback variance. So.
So I don't think we can vote in the affirmative, but my sentiments are in favor. But I think that probably it's a negative vote, so but I don't know where the rest of the deliberation is, so.
Well, we were just in the middle of it. Is it that because you believe, is it because you believe that the criterion in question is whether the granting the variance is based on demonstrated need, not convenience, and no other feasible alternative is available? Is that what you're hung up on?
So, no, I would, and so in that stiff measure context, I would deny the variance. But I think, as far, and this is what I was querying when I asked about the issue was really the purview of the planning board, is I think, there's no negative impact that is reasonable in my view that should be denied, so I'm more acquiescent than I am in the mood of denial here, so, but I think the letter law instructs us to say, no.
Okay, Henry, I'm sorry to interrupt. You want to get back to your family?
Well, before I do that, I would like to hear what the rest of the board is thinking.
Yeah, well, we've already heard Fran has spoken a little bit, and Will was in the process of speaking. So I can keep my phone on, you can listen.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, I'd like to, yeah. Are people consistent with that thinking, or are they divergent from that?
I don't think it's fair for me to characterize. Although, I mean, I will, Fran, who already spoke, said he had problems with the demonstrated need, that he didn't feel that the application met the demonstrated need criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Will, you want?
So just going down the list, B, I don't think the applicant gets that. The hardship, I'm looking at C, the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or the prior owner. I think it is. They're asking for a house that's too big and a lot that's too small. I don't think they get that. The granting of the variance will not substantially reduce or impair, looking at D as a dog. The granting of the variance will not substantially reduce or impair the use of the abutting property. I think they went on that. Everybody thinks that this is a great thing and it's gonna help Reedfield, and it's gonna help the lake. That is not in dispute. It is, it's a good project. But looking at E as an elephant, the applicant clearly misses that. They could build a smaller house. There is a feasible alternative, and I hate it. I hate it. I'd love for this house to be built, but it just doesn't, it doesn't fall in our ordinances.
That's exactly what I would say, Will. I agree with what I just heard. Cliff, would you like to speak?
In terms of the residency requirement, I think we can overcome that by tying residency to a building permit in some way. I think I see my way through A, B, C, D, but without the benefits of any sort of floor plan or blueprints to look at. I'm having a lot of trouble with E, demonstrating E, because we don't know what design alternatives are available. And there may not be. I would go so far as to say that agree to continue the hearing until they can bring in some floor plans. Let us look at it and see if there's options to massage the footprint of this building to reduce or eliminate the need for variance.
Well, there could always be a new application. No application, we don't, there's no death penalty for anybody who applies for variance. There's always a different application with more detail later. But I think we have to vote up or down on this one. That's.
If I may sort of make an observation of that, I agree with you. It'd be good to look at floor plans. But what that really boils down to, unfortunately, is a matter of lifestyle and taste, and that is not anything that we can put on our judge as a political body. It's the Moras's appetites that are going to dictate that, not ours or any subjective judgment that this Board of Appeals might have. So I think floor plans, that's what I was trying to say earlier when I was talking about the outside of the building as opposed to the inside. I just think, we can't judge what their need is or appetite is for living space. That is not part of our ordinance, at all.
I guess I'm next. Usually the chair talks last. Okay. Again, the issue is not whether this would be in the abstract a good thing, an improvement. I think it would be personally. I think the issue is whether it meets those strict standards for a variance. And I really do on subdivision E. I'm not blaming anyone for buying a comfortable house, believe me. But in this context, I don't think the application has proven that this particular house, there's a demonstrated need beyond convenience, I also think that as to, let's go back for a second. I do not think that the variance would substantially reduce or impair abutting property. Clearly it wouldn't. I don't think the hardship is the result of action taken by the Moras's. And I don't think that a grant of a variance would alter the essential character of the locality. I do think, this is trickier, that this thing that's this criterion that says the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. I do think there, again, the application has a problem, which is that the general conditions of the neighborhood are you have a big lake and you have a slope. And it's not unique to that particular parcel, although that parcel, because it's small, it's harder to get around that problem. But I don't think that the application meets that criterion A. That's a close call, but in my own mind, I don't think it meets E. And unfortunately, under the law, unless it meets all the criteria, I can't vote for it. So that's where I come out.
Is the secretary a voting member?
Oh, I'm sorry, she certainly is.
She is, but she's also been really busy and hasn't had time to really read up on some of the things you guys have been talking about. So,
That is.
it's me, Henry Holly.
Hi, Holly.
And I haven't really had time to like read along as you guys are going because I've had to type. And I tend to be much more easygoing about these things and not too informed about the law. So I don't see any big problem with their application, but I certainly, can't speak to the legal aspect of it. To me, it seems like it would be better to have what they have with their improvements than what they have now, but whether or not it's legal or not, I don't know.
So you'd vote for it?
I know what I do. Yeah, I would be inclined to vote for it. Yeah. But again, I haven't been able to follow things. I've mostly been just writing up what everybody else has been saying.
It sounds, maybe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not getting this correctly, it sounds to me like Will, Fran, and I would vote no on the variance. Henry, tell me which way you come out.
The letter of the law and those 5 criteria instruct me to say no also, Peter. Your argument is Bill.
I'm not that compelling. Cliff, and your vote is?
Well, I did take to heart what Henry talked about a need. Law doesn't define what need is. But whether, I just don't think it's been demonstrated either need or convenience here. I think the applicant could find out why. So it really does, like you say, vote against D.
It looks like a 5-1 vote. We have that right?
Yeah.
I wonder, Peter, is there a way to deliver a decision like this that can instruct the planning board or the applicant in such a way that allows them to somehow realize their dream, which is what I think ultimately we all want, but we feel like we're in this box.
Yes, I would hope that the planning board, I was gonna say,
At some point in time, when you know,
I would hope that the planning board would further engage with Mr. and Mrs. Marash to try to work something out that would work, or fits under our.
What they're proposing will help the lake. It's not gonna have an impact on the road, it's a private road. All their neighbors support this. And there's really absolutely no reason except for the statutory letter of the law that instructs us to go the way that I just decided. And I would say sadly, I would rather support this because I think it's the common sense thing to do. And I think there's got to be some sort of passion around this issue for our community as opposed to just the cut and dry letter of the law that drives this thing to stupid endpoints.
Well,
It's being lost in our local ordinance.
yes, I believe the planning board has somewhat more discretion than the Board of Appeals does in these things. And there may be a way to work it out. At the planning board level. It is, unfortunately, it's a small parcel next to a big lake. And that is a problem. That's the way things play out.
Well, Peter, this gets me getting back to the cart before the horse issue that we talked about 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago, that I didn't even think there was something to appeal because the planning board had decided its stance, yes. And so what is there to appeal until there's a decision by the planning board? And that's a real continuing dilemma for me in this situation, and I just don't see still. I think the planning board is copping out, and I think the town attorney who is instructing us to take this case on is copping out. I still think the cart's before the horse, and I guess I would like to be on a record about that.
Henry, I don't know if you heard me, I already am on the record about it. I was when we started. But just so you understand, Henry, the appeal aspect, we have original jurisdiction over a variance request. And we also have appellate jurisdiction over planning board decisions.
Understand.
They haven't made a decision. If they ever did on this and there was an appeal, we could hear the appeal. Okay,
well, that's instructive. So this is okay, so we're the original decider on the variance request as opposed to the appellant's decision on the planning board.
The planning board sent us to, you need to go for variance.
I know that's what they said. I know that's what they told you to do. I'm not, but I would hope still you could work something out with them. No, remand, we can't, we have the power to remand it technically back to them, no. All we can do is rule out a variance, which we have done. But I'm saying,
literally, you're gonna kick the morasses back to the planning board after, we've been through this 3 or 4 times now. And where we're at a point right now is, you put us in a situation that we should basically, at this point, you would rather have me rebuild the place that I have existing right there. I'll take it down wall by wall, leave it 18 feet from the water, and then I will start at 100 feet and build what I can, stay within the conformance and go to the CEO and say, I'd like a permanent place. And that would be better off for the town of Reedfield and in the lake. No, it wouldn't, but that's where we're being forced, which is not smart.
Was that Will speaking?
No, that was Scott Morash speaking.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I think it's easy, and at some level, as a part of it, like to change my vote and be more permissive. And instruct the planning board to take this on. I think there's a compelling argument that should say that the Morasses should be able to read their dreams.
There is a member of the planning board on listening in, and I hope she's hearing this, and she could maybe perhaps comment. Well, she's down Jeffrey Medor, right there.
She's entitled to comment, but she's also entitled not to comment.
Correct, correct.
Henry, I'm about to wrap things up. Anything further you'd like to say?
No, except I did just suggest that I'd like to change my vote, which makes it from, was it?
It was 5 to 1.
I make it 4 to 2.
Make it 4 to 2, yeah. Yeah, I'll be ready, I think that's where I'll end up.
Okay.
So, can I actually, Tom wants to say something.
Well, public comments over. Your time, you can talk.
Okay. So with the impervious soil to the size of the lot that we have, 20% is 5,200 square feet of impervious soil. the camp is 1,000 square feet of that. So that leaves 4,200 square feet that I could have in a driveway and a structure. So I could build the structure back and that structure could almost be 60 by 45 and leave the place that's on the water as well. And I don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We want to move the place that's on the lake and move it back. Betterment for all. Put in a septic system. I was on the phone with Pat Jackson septic system and look up a septic system. Septic systems are good for 15 to 40 years, in best case. That one's 50 years. The land use ordinance, you people supporting that should be looking out for the betterment of the lake. And if that means that you have to, think about, how these rules might not be appropriate for this, you should be thinking about that. Because when you tell me I can't build that, well, I can let that septic system just rot there and we just continue to use it. Is that smart? Good. Will I do it? Probably not, because I don't have that in me, but you're forcing me that way.
Scott Morris, I think that was you just speaking. Question for you is, if you were able to buy those 2 acres that you talked about during the site inspection today from your neighbor, would that mitigate the concerns, the detailed concerns that we have over the A, B, C, D, E aspects of our considerations tonight? Would that put those to rest? And if that's a solution.
Well, again, what I would say to that is, it's funny because, the state wants to, dictate some laws, but if you look at one of their laws, they say a driveway is a vehicular access way less than 500 feet in length, serving no more than 2 lots or 2 single-family dwellings. If that's the case.
Which says to me that your road is a driveway.
That is correct, sir. That is correct. And therefore, we only need 20 feet. But you know what? 911 came in and someone put up Mayo Road and Cliff Luck came down and said that shouldn't be Mayo Road. This should be Prosperity Lane. But it is. And now we have, it's a 50-foot setback. Wait a minute. If you look at the town of Reedfield from in town, you can have 25-foot setback to the center of the road. But you won't allow me that down on the lake? It's crazy. With 2 people and the guy that owns the property saying, I'm okay with that. And no, Dave's not gonna sell me the property behind it, and that's his property, and I don't want his property. And he's fine with what we're doing.
Right.
At some point, some logical and pragmatic thinking has to take over for the town, for the better of the town, the better of the lake.
Okay, I'm adjourning the hearing now. I thank all of you for your participation.
What's your registered vote? Just to recap, please.
4-2.
Okay, yeah, I'm still.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, I don't think there was an actual motion and actual vote. You took a straw vote, but I don't think there was a motion and a vote.
Okay, good point.
C-O-N-E.
Oh, I'm gonna, someone needs to make, someone, the board member, make a motion. Either way, and then we'll take a vote, either accept or reject.
Accept the application as submitted, Mrs. Henry.
All in favor of accepting the variance application? Granting the variance, all in favor?
Based on the
Aye, Mrs. Henry.
residency or comments.
Patient,
Contingency on residency, correct. Thank you.
so Henry votes in favor of this motion, of the motion. And Holly, do you vote in favor of the motion?
I do vote.
I vote against the motion.
I'd like to change my vote.
You didn't vote.
Who was that?
Brad. I think the trade-off for protecting the lake overrules denial of the 13 feet. Right? Also, the fact that it's not a public road, it really isn't anything more than a lane or a driveway. I don't see how that's going to affect the character of the area. And the fact that both abutters agreed to the application, and the fact that I'm an advocate of protecting our water bodies. I just feel compelled to change my vote. Because I think what they want to do is the best thing that can be done with that existing dwelling and the topography of the land and the site.
Cliff, what's your vote?
I don't think we can get into the planning board criteria. We have to look at the criteria in front of us. I think it's a good project, but I definitely not convinced. They've done great. Maybe not convinced. Continue to go. It's the variance until such time there's. Show that.
Will, what's your vote? No.
But we're gonna end up with a tie, then what happens?
It fails.
Um,
I'm looking again at our ordinance to make sure that is the correct, legally correct, result.
So a tie vote fails, Peter?
Right. I do think, again, I know I'm being repetitive, but the planning board has discretion to do all sorts of things. This is the place where you can work something out, or something should be worked out.
So Peter, may I say, based on that comment, that one of the reasons why I made the motion that I did and made the vote that I did and changed the thinking as I did was to instruct the planning board that they need to rethink this and be commonsensical about where this is heading for the town and for the quality of the lake in Maratico and for just a common sense approach to how we handle matters like this.
Or, to play devil's advocate, I'm not saying they should, or they should be flat out saying, if they believe it, that the law doesn't permit larger houses to be built on small lots next to the lake. I mean,
Well, there you go, but.
or one thing or another.
Multiple examples of that occurring already.
Yeah, it appears that way.
I can show you the pictures.
I don't dispute that.
I've got them on my laptop. I can show you lots that.
I really don't, the planning board is the one that has to make the deal, make it work. Right.
Which is what we said at the outset, which is critical for the horse thing, is why are we doing this now in the absence of the planning board ruling?
Yeah, Mary, Ms. Costigan, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, give me if you'd like, give me a call tomorrow or sometime convenient to you, and I'll give you the background on what happened internally as to, I thought, as to what I advocated for procedurally and versus what actually happened.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Happy to. And I know you've already voted, but I just, as a result, you're actually giving the planning board less options because now it has to be closer to the water. So the planning board doesn't have the ability to move it closer to the road. They do have the ability to move it to, to some extent, but now that it's been determined that we can't be closer than 50 feet to the road, you're actually limiting what the planning board can do. So it's just moving it closer to the water.
Can't they apply for another variance?
Yes.
No, only the zoning board can issue a variance from those road setback. The planning board cannot.
Yeah,
But this particular, all it says is this particular house at this particular moment, we did not grant the variance to in a tie vote. It doesn't stop something else from happening. Okay, I'm in the same.
So.
No, I'm sorry. I disagree with that. You've denied a variance for a single family house from the road.
It does make a difference whether you ask for 13 feet or 10 feet. It does. It does. Anyway, I'm going to adjourn the hearing. Thank you all.
State of affairs for the town. That's all.
I
You
cannot.
have a chance to send a message.
Okay, I want to hear. I really don't want to hear.
Good night, Henry. I didn't get everybody's, I don't know who Janet's iPad is, but I did the best I could.
I hate to see how.
Oh.
I know Greenfield was.
I'm really sorry.
This was on my list,
Yeah.
which I no longer own.
Yeah.
Oh,
I would vote for the.
Yes. It almost, it turns my stomach to think that, I'm being
Cliff,
treated this way.
Cliff Buck, are you there?
For 22 years and I'm being treated.
Who
this
you
way.
want?
You really shouldn't feel that.
Who do you
I
want?
do, I do.
Is
And
Cliff
I-
Buck there?
Doesn't mean you need to take your mask off.
I might just either sell the property or rebuild on the spot, right where it is, at 18 feet, and then I'll build something back there. And you won't like that, but that's where I want. We've been ping pong back and forth.
As a board, we have to follow the law.
If they followed what I told them to do, we never wouldn't have been within the planning board.
So what am I supposed to do as the person, as a taxpayer? And it would be thrown back and forth. We're being thrown back and forth.
They kept saying, we come to the variance board twice. They keep trying to bring us back here. It's hard, I mean, put yourself in my shoes.
I'm not blaming
We're
you.
stuck with-
It's a misery.
Is this the way to treat residents?
No.
It isn't. Taxpayers, no.
What's, this is Keith Meyer. What's Cliff Buck's email?
It's CLIF.
CILF.
No, CLIF.
I couldn't find my key, that's why I had to call.
Well, I'm sorry. I know you're adjourned, but I'm just amazed and I'd like to talk to Cliff.
Okay, my email is CLIF underscore.
Yeah.
Okay. BUCK@Yahoo.
Okay, well, we haven't had a conversation in a while, but I'm really astounded by what's happened here this evening.
Well,
No, it was shot in the dark for me.
yeah, it's tough.
We were not ready.
Yeah, and I agree. I haven't talked to you in a while. I really liked you and respected you, so that's a given. I'm just surprised that Scott's had the kind of challenges he's had. I understand the size of the lot, but it's interesting to us if somebody buys that, they really can't do much with it. And I don't know whether that's a taking or not in terms of the Supreme Court ruling.
I can call Eric and tell him, but
Well, yeah, the courts have been pretty clear on takings. It certainly wouldn't be a taking.
Yeah, I'm just sorry we haven't had an opportunity to talk. I know you're a Missourian, I'm a Kansan, but I really liked you. And we just haven't had much intercourse over the last few years. But I'm surprised in terms of the concern about the lake quality and those kinds of things. I have no doubt about Scott. Scott's kind of a unique individual in many ways, but his heart is certainly in the right place.
I agree with you. It's a good project. We're just not, we're not allowed to address the planning board criteria.
Yeah.
And the lake issues, the water quality issues, those are all planning board criteria.
Yeah, and as you know, we don't know what the rules in Maine are, and they're different in Kansas, but it's fascinating that he's been sort of pushed along in terms of the bureaucratic process and not having a way in which to determine what it is that he should do to figure out how to come some kind of conclusion successfully for his house.
Well, I've been talking to him about this project for years because it's been years in the making, and I've always suggested that he put together some floor plans to see if there isn't some areas where the floor plan could be modified in some way to not to fit within the footprint area that's the state allows under shoreline zoning. And I was kind of disappointed to see that there's never been a floor plan put together.
Well, you're much better attuned to this than we are, but Cliff, I don't understand how that road that comes down to the Hueys and the Marashes can be considered a road in all honesty. I mean, there are only the Marashes and the Hueys that go down that.
Well, the road is any vehicular traveled way that serves more than one dwelling.
Yeah, and Jan's saying in the, in the background, they have a gate and nobody comes down there during the winter. And we don't understand, and we're not trying to interject ourselves. We just think Scott, he's a wild hair. He's not exactly what we would use to judge what we do with our time, but he is a very big-hearted guy, and he believes in Maranacook, and he wants to move up there full-time and retire.
I know he does, and it's a good project. It's a better project than what he's got. I just would like to see a floor plan to see if there isn't a way that that could be moved around to where everything would fit within the footprint that he's got to work with.
Hey, Keith. Sorry, Keith, I don't mean to interrupt. This is Rob Schumacher, Samantha Marash's boyfriend, and I was just listening in, and Cliff, it's hard to hear with exactly everything that's being said on the Zoom call. I want to clarify, you voted against it, the motion, correct?
excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're supposed to just leave everything as is. Eric's gonna come over. and deal with it.
All right, they're closing the town office and we gotta shut this down. So I can't really stay here and debate because they're closing up.
It wasn't just more of a question than a debate, but
Anyway, to answer your question, yes, on one criteria, so.
what was that criteria exactly? It was that you didn't think it was that it was needed, that it was a convenience thing?
that it was not proved that it was demonstrated need, not convenience.
Okay, understood. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Keith, email me, Keith. I'd like to talk to you.
Yeah, Cliff, that's fine. We were up there. We've had some interesting challenges too. I'm sorry we haven't reconnected. I always enjoyed it.
Okay, I did too.
Well, I was, yeah, I was,
For speaking on the behalf. Thank you. This is Sam. Thank
yeah.
you.
Hi, Sam.
Thank you for speaking on their behalf. I know they really appreciate it.
Well, it's a bizarre situation. I don't understand it, to be honest.
This is David Palmer, and I wonder if Scott and Don were residents of Reed Field, would that make a difference as far as proving the hardship?
It's a very good question, David, and I must say I struggle as a lawyer when we discriminate against people for who they are. And we have this major problem about discriminating against people because of their color, their religion, or whatever. And here we have someone who's a Maine resident who's being discriminated against because he can't show he's a permanent Reed Field resident. It's bizarre to us as lawyers. I just don't get it.
And this is the planning board is going, or the appeals board is going by Supreme Court ruling or state law or something.
Well, they threw that. Yeah, I agree.
But just so you guys know, this is being recorded and it's in the town's possession. So just any conversation that you have is going to be in the town's possession and as a recording format when you guys are done speaking. Just wanted to throw that.
That's absolutely fine. We're comfortable with it. I have no qualms about it. I think it's a crazy system in one sense, and we spend more than $7,000 for the record in terms of real estate taxes, and we're told that we have no input into what's going on, and that residents have to be able to show they're going to live in Kennebec County or Reed Field to be able to even assert these things. That's crazy to us as lawyers. So anyway, for the record, David, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Keith. I'm doing really good, getting the house buttoned up for the winter.
Yeah, when do you go to Florida?
In about 2 weeks. And you are where?
We're in Kansas.
Oh, great. How's the weather there?
Well, it's raining. You're going to get some of it, but it's fine. We're going to go to Flagstaff, which is very different. You probably know it's 7,000 feet. And that's where our son lives. And he's had some challenges business-wise and personally. And we don't know when we're going. I'm all right. Anyway.
Tell Janet I said hello.
We don't know quite when we're going to Flagstaff.
Let the snow build up first.
Yeah, and anyway, you go to Crested Butte with your daughter. We're still skiing. I mean, I water skied, but I'm still snow skiing too. So
perfect. Yes, absolutely. Well, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Say hello to Marilyn.
I will. And the same to Jean.
Yeah, bye. That was all right, Jan.
You were still on.
I know I was still on.
Look, get off.
I'm trying. You're on too.
I don't think so.
Yes, you are. I'm hearing you.
Hey, Keith, on the top right, it says leave and then you confirm it.
Yeah, I know. It's not letting me out. It's interesting.